Okay, so there's this group of people out there, right, who believes that they're so righteous, so good, because they claim that they're not racist, like the right, that they voted for someone who is not a racist. But let me tell you something. They're the most racist ones out there. Those people are the ones who support policies like DEI and affirmative action. So let's start with DEI. So DEI stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. And it seeks to help groups who have been historically discriminated. This is getting a little out of hand because this is usually used in workplaces. Like when they hire people, they pick on race rather than their merit. The key word here is historically. So my question is, how does what happened years ago impact the current people's lives? I think people just fail to see the progress that has been made in their country. Because, yeah, years ago, like 60 years ago, 100 years ago, there was discrimination. Yeah, but now, if we do a little comparison, you can tell there's a huge difference. And so much has changed. And these specific people who were discriminated against are dead. Why are we favoring these people now who are not impacted by past discriminations? And guess what? This is at odds with the law of justice because the law treats individuals according to their own actions and not according to the actions of others. So, for example, DEI favors blacks over whites because white people used to own slaves and blacks were enslaved. Okay, but today, we're talking about today, right? Today, whites do not own slaves and blacks are not slaves. In America, in Africa, there are still slaves enslaved by other Africans. So why are we taking white people's opportunity away when they did not personally commit these past injustices and giving it to black people who are not personally harmed? Think about it. The nature of this policy is discriminatory because you're literally picking and choosing based on race. You're saying, oh, I want this race more than this race, so I'm going to pick you regardless of how great you are at your job, and I don't want you because of your color. Isn't that what racism is all about? Let's say that you're hiring someone and there are two people, okay? They're both great at their job. One of them is not a non-white person who has not been discriminated against, and there's a white person who has been discriminated against, which is very possible given the current rise of like these anti-white movements and stuff, stupid shit. Anyways, so which one would you choose? If you choose a non-white, how would you justify that to the white person? Are you going to tell them that they didn't get chosen because they are white? Like, that's stupid. Let me give you an example. Biden's State Department conditioned eligibility for promotions on an employee's ability to pass a DEI loyalty test. In 2023, Biden's chief diversity and inclusion officer for the State Department told Advocate, "We made a change that if you want to be considered for promotion at the Department of State, you must be able to document where you are doing to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in its growth. This is how you are judged to vote first." What? What about the thing that actually matter? What about their skills? Hello? Like, are we just gonna ignore that? Like, what is skills anyways? Like, what is merit? It seems like it doesn't exist nowadays because people are not looking at it anymore. Because they're so race obsessed. Let me give you another example. The representation and inclusion standards for Oscar eligibility. Literally just read their website and it's bullshit, okay? So, for example, at least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from at least two of the following underrepresented groups. If that's not enough, let's break down what DEI actually stands for. Diversity, equity, inclusion. You think, oh, equity is good, right? Equity is not equality. Equality is opportunity, and equity is outcome-based. So equity basically says that people of different colors should all have the same outcome regardless of whether they're qualified or not. Just like DEI, affirmative action also attempts to address disadvantages among non-whites. For example, Alan Back was rejected from UC Davis twice. So he filed a lawsuit, so the California Supreme Court struck down the program as a violation rate of white applicants. So the fact that white people apply to be considered eligible does not diminish or erase this discriminatory nature that the left are trying to accomplish. And this also has shown to affect and harm the Asian community. This whole case on this, you can read about. It's the Student for Fair Admission versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. Sorry. I can do a whole video on this, so I'm not going to get deep into it, but you can read about this. Basically, this showed that it was easier to get into Harvard as a black student, even if their test scores were lower than whites or Asians. Statistics has shown that Asians score the highest on the SAT. So this is actively discriminating against other races other than black. Even if an Asian student scores higher than a black student, the black student automatically gets in the school because they're simply black. Why? Because black people need an upper hand because of past discrimination. Again, historical discrimination that happened 60 years ago is not an excuse to hinder your work ethic now. How is a black person now affected by what their ancestors experienced? You're not going through this, girl. So lowering their standard is necessary. You're basically saying that they're not smart enough. That's insulting. But okay. So instead of looking at merit, you're looking at race, which perpetuates racism. You're the people who say you're not racist, you try to erase racism, but you're perpetuating it. This is also harmful because this encourages the hardest working black students to not work as hard because they don't have to work as hard and do as well and still get into the best schools. And you know what else they're doing? You are setting students up for failure. Because when they're placed in a school which they're not prepared for, they are going to drop out. So I don't see where the logic is. So I think what it all comes down to is merit. Because at the end of the day, if I'm hiring a group of people, I want a competent one, not a diverse one. I want a group that will get the job done, that are excellent. You know what? They can't explain to me their outside factors that led to their lack of skills or their low test scores. Well, I might feel for them. If they don't satisfy and meet my requirements, I'm not gonna hire them. It's not that deep, because why do skin colors matter so much to you guys? Like, you guys on the left are calling the right racist, yet you guys are the ones being the most racial obsessed ones. You guys are just creating lazy people, because these directives are encouraging groups to not work as hard, so they become dependent on it, which leads to what? Lazy people. I really want you to think beyond the surface of these policies. Actually use your fucking brain and think about what these things are actually doing to people. Because they're not doing what you think they're doing. Actually, you know what I think? I think that the left accuse the right for being racist to safeguard their own racist behaviors and beliefs. That's what I think. I said it. Now the left is going to come at my throat. If you really want to end racism, stop perpetuating it and thereby creating new injustices. Thanks for watching.